So let's work with font family. Now, if we make this smaller, we'll see that we're creating an H4 style element. Let's go ahead and do that. H4, Lenny Roy. Okay. And then go to this website and grab 2 paragraphs of text. So this is just called lorem ipsum, just filler text, so we have something to work with. So I'm going to grab about that much and throw that in here. Let's see what the instructions say. And grab 2 paragraphs of text. This lesson is more important to just get a taste for the font family, but you won't be changing it that much. And then later on, we can get into Google Fonts and you can see how we do it in the real world. When we're in Glitch, we're going to be importing these fonts. So for now, just try to soak in as much as possible, but the font family tag is one that I don't know too well because I'm always just kind of reaching for it when needed, and it's only the one time or at the most 2 or 3 times per page or per project. But I did ask you to grab a paragraph. I'm going to throw it into a paragraph tag here in my local environment, just like that. Okay. And then we have some content editable, so we can actually focus back in on here. Pretty much this link here will take you to this pretty useful site whenever you just need text to fill out your project so you could work with it, so without having to come up with actual something there like your favorite breakfast or favorite movie or celebrity. If you just need some text to work with, and doesn't matter what it is, here's a good example. It's lipsum.com, and there's lots of other ones, a lot of fun ones as well that aren't just Latin phrases. So back in the code pen, we see 2 content editables here. So let's try changing them to these different options and see if there is any noticeable difference. It's not always the case. So pay attention here. We're going to go into the syntax, hopefully a little bit. For now, let's just see the change. So right now, this first paragraph is set to Georgia. Let's see what happens when we remove it. It does change. We could change it to Arial. We see a change. Change it back to default, Palatino. We see a change there as well. Helvetica. I think it changes. Sometimes it doesn't work for me in the examples, but it seems to have worked there. Regular Times. Let's just do Comic Sans and then move to the bottom one. The infamous Comic Sans. Now for the second one, it's already set to Verdana. Let's change that to Trebuchet MS. I do see a change. Oops. There we go. And then last but not least, the clearest one, Impact. So these are the built-in fonts. They will work. You do not have to import anything. What I told you before about Google Fonts, you don't need to do here. You don't need to include anything from any external site. These are built into the HTML, and you could just use them right away. The font family tag works like this. What you're seeing here has been grabbed from a service like Google Fonts that packages up this for you, but pretty much it's all this. It's the same as any other CSS property. There is font family. One second. There is font family with a dash followed by a value, which in this case is a couple different things, but they're not working like border, where it's solid red 1px and they're all the same. They're all working together towards the same element. The syntax here is Roboto, which is referencing a specific font called Roboto, which is not built in. And then if for some reason you didn't import it correctly or the Roboto source file was deleted, there's a backup, right? So you set your first font here, whatever the font that you really prefer, and then you set up a backup in case this one doesn't work for some reason. And then with this, it's just either serif or sans serif. It's just a different, whether the letters have the distinguished feet, as I call them, or not. So this one's going to be without the serifs. So let's see, you add a generic family and a fallback font, right? So now we set this one to a generic family and a fallback font. We could change this to Georgia and it should work, right? And then we can, how about we do impact, right? So impact is felt, so it doesn't have to jump to Helvetica. But let's say we did Arial. I should do Comic. I want to do one that really stands out. So Comic Sans, right? And then over here, impact. So you see it finds Comic Sans, so it doesn't need to go over to impact. But if we misspell Comic Sans, it's going to jump right to the fallback, which is impact. And if we remove that one, it just goes back to default because it couldn't find either. Now let's see if we can mess around with this serif. Let's change this back to something that is times. Oh, did not find time. There we go. Times serif. I hate this thing. That's exactly what happened last time, but don't worry. Okay, so we have fantasy here. It was experienced as a font. Interesting. Really, all you need to know is that the font family takes a built-in font. You can use any one of these, but more commonly we'll be using Google Fonts. So let's talk a little bit about Google Fonts. I'm going to show you real quick a preview of lessons 3 and 4. So let's say I start a new project on Glitch. Now I'm going to be teaching using Glitch a lot more in the next few weeks. But for now, just follow along. I'll even delete a bunch of this stuff here to avoid confusion. Don't worry about this. I just want to show you how the Google Fonts work. This is plain text. Okay, so we see that our see, somebody's already adding something here. We are going to remove this. You can see that that is the default font for this project. This is a real website right here. I'll be teaching you how to use Glitch. Hopefully this is not the first time you're seeing it, but if it is, I'm not going to get into anything that makes it work because there's going to be a whole lesson for that. But effectively, we're not going to be including built-in fonts using this syntax. The real workflow is that you work on a project and then you decide that you don't want to use the built-in ones because they're too limiting, right? These are not, you want something actually really specific or a little bit nicer. So what do? You have to load it in from an external site, in our case, Google Fonts. So we go over to Google Fonts and we're greeted with all of these options. You could just look around for one, or you could always search for one. I'm gonna find one that's very distinctive, like lobster, right? So I've decided that I want to use lobster, and there's 2 steps to lobster, right? You have to reference it in the body. To be more specific, since we haven't talked about body yet, I'm going to do the P tag, because you can see here, oops, that this is a P tag right here. And I need to add a font family here. So this part we know. We're adding just the property, font family, and now we just need a value. Well, actually, we don't need that font family either because Google Fonts makes it extremely easy, but there's 2 places to put it, here and then up here somewhere. So we select lobster. You can see down here, it says one family selected. You click this and it gives you the 2 things. I'm going to start off with the one we know. You see the specifying CSS tells you the exact rule that you need. Just copy the whole thing and place it in the style that you want. Now this is already dragging it in because it must have some sort of connection to the Google Fonts library, but that won't work when you're doing it here, for example. Oops. When you're doing it locally, that's not going to work. So you'll still need to go into the HTML and you're going to find something called the head. And we're going to have to get into this in lesson 3, but the head is kind of what happens in the background. It's where it's like the trunk of the HTML. You're going to put things that are important there, including your reference to your CSS file, your JavaScript file, and any other external library you use, for example, this font. So you take this one, the second one, and you just add it to your head. So you can see it changed it a little bit. And they're all just links to different files. In this case, it's an external one. And it is where the font family Lobster actually lives. So now we can find it. Just like we use it to find images or A tags, this link tag specifically just grabs the library and makes it available for you to reference over here. If we were to mistype Lobster, it'll work because it's actually listening to this cursive. I see. So this is what Lobster looks like, and you'll see that if I got rid of the link tag, it turns back to plain text, right? So just referencing the font family Lobster is not enough. It needs to say, pretty much the computer's saying this. Computer, here's my plain text. In the CSS, I want you to find the font family Lobster and apply it to all p tags. So which the computer says, I don't know any font family named Lobster. I only know Comic Sans, Impact, Helvetica, etc. I don't know anybody named Lobster, right? And you say, okay, well, fine. If you can't find Lobster, then how about you just take that, just make it cursive. Instead of sans serif or serif, it's cursive. Now it's not working. I don't know why, but that's not the point anyway. The point is that, let's take a look at the syntax actually. Oh, there's a comma. Comma is missing. Thought I added that. 1 second. There we go. It's saying, okay, I don't know what Lobster is, but I know what cursive is. And then you say, okay, well, I know where Lobster is. Lobster is on this link. And then it recognizes it and applies the title, right? Let's change it to a different one so we can just make sure. How about one that isn't cursive, like source, no. Merriweather Sans, right here. See that it likes to combine them into one call so you don't have to write them all, Lobster, Merriweather, Sans, source, but it's going to make the load time slower. So this is really an external website that is being used. So the more that you try to jam in there, the slower your text is going to go from plain text to your selected font. It's not going to happen right away. The slower it is, the more time it stays in plain text. It should be instant, and it will be if you just do one. So we got Merriweather right here. We need to change the font family. Oops. 1 second. Over here. Copy. Place it in. Something's happening here. It's sans serif. Let's see. Now it listens to serif. See how now it has a little ending on the T and the over here at the bottom of the T and the bottom of the P. That's what serifs are. So if you just add it again, it just removes that, makes everything a little bit rounder, a bit nicer. But it doesn't know what Merriweather Sans is. So you grab the code and you put this in your head. And now it's Merriweather font. So a long way to go to understanding how a lot of this works, because we still don't know what the head tag does, or presumably it's the trunk, but who knows what that means. We're going to get all into this and glitch. But the main point is this. When working with fonts, I almost exclusively use Google Fonts or another external service, and I load it in to my website, and then I call it using that name. Pretty much. So let's see if that is the case, then I could add Impact here as a default, and when I delete my call Impact, it should change to Impact. Let's see if that works. And there it is. It did not find Merriweather Sans because I removed it from my head, and then it just went to the very next one and made it sans serif. Let's see if this one even changes a serif. Nope, this one is by default sans serif. Anyway, that's font family. We're going to cut it off there, and let's actually do the challenge. I've also added a list of other built-in fonts that you can see here. These are all the website fonts. Play around with this. Try to copy this. Leave it with just one. Try 2 fallbacks. I'm not even sure if that works. And just get comfortable with switching fonts in and out, either from the built-in or from Google Fonts itself. Let's see what our challenge is. We might skip this one. Create a P tag with your favorite song lyrics. Oh, this is a hard one, actually. Sometimes I run. If you know what song that is, then you're as old as I am. Sometimes I run. Just a line there. Any line will do. And then add a style tag, which we've done many times. Let's make this bigger, actually. Add a style tag. And we are going to change the font to Times Roman Times Serif. Okay, so I'm going to call my font family. Oops. No, what did I do wrong? You can see the syntax is already off, not the color I expected, so I'm already being warned. I need to call the element in question. Still looks weird. No, that should be fine. We're going to do this to this one P tag. Now, I am going to add the font family property, and I'm going to just bring this right over so I don't mess anything up, so I don't forget the quotation marks, so I don't forget the fallback, and I don't forget the serif classification. And then we look down, and there it is. It has changed. It's a little subtle. Let's remove it to make sure. And you can see it looks a little bit different now because it doesn't have the serif. Put it back. Oops. And then it has the serif again. If you've completed this with the P tag and the style tag and the font family written correctly, and then this value changed to anything, you could even change it to that just to get the syntax right. Oh, see, and it affected all the P tags. Then you should be in good shape, and we can move on to the next one. I will see you there.